With Jordan Romano, the team's closer, hitting the 15-day injured list with lower back inflammation, the Toronto Blue Jays needed someone at the back end of their bullpen. With them sitting pretty in the third wildcard spot, 2 games up from the 4th place team, and 5 games back for the AL East in a very competitive year, they decided to hit up the St. Louis Cardinals and go and target another back-end reliever in Jordan Hicks, who's only 26 years old this season and has been having a pretty solid year. Although he is a true rental, he's only being paid $1.837 million in his final arbitration year, and he's pitched pretty well to a 3.67 ERA, a 3.4 SIERA, a 3.02 FIP, and he's already got 8 saves on the year. Not to mention his strikeouts per 9 is currently at 12.74 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is by far the best in his career by over a couple strikeouts an inning. So he's really having a career year right now, and he is going to be a great piece in the back end of Toronto's bullpen going forward towards the playoffs. Before we get on the details of the trade, if you're interested in more content like this, analyzing trades past and present and potential trades in the future, make sure to hit that subscribe button in either the bottom right or the top right, and leave a comment down below on what your thoughts on this trade are after the video ends. The centerpiece of this deal is Sem Robberse, a 21-year-old right-handed pitcher currently pitching in AA, and according to MLB Pipeline is their 7th best prospect in the Toronto Blue Jays system before he got traded to St. Louis. He was signed out of Zeist, Netherlands in 2019, and he's had a pretty tumultuous career so far. If you go back to the pandemic season, he actually wasn't able to return back to Netherlands, so he had to stay in a hotel right next to the team complex facility, which meant he had to work out alone and potentially with some of the Venezuelan teammates that he had that also couldn't return home. So he really did struggle a little bit in 2020, as did many minor league players without a season. He didn't let that adversity get to him, and even since 2020, his prospect stock has only gone up, but he's been able to work out himself a lot on getting better since 2020, and it's shown proof that even though he wasn't able to work out with the team, he really did end up improving himself and becoming a better ball player based on the work he did by himself in the 2020 season. That's not something he's unfamiliar with as well. Growing up in the Netherlands, a lot of what he did is self-taught. And because of that, he doesn't necessarily have a lot of skills that you'd expect for someone who's gone through a lot of coaching like you would, for example, in the USA. For a team, that's a great thing. He hasn't been taught a ton of things from coaches, so now they're able to go ahead and mold him to their desire, and that's what they've done, and part of the reason why he's put up such great numbers. He had the foundation of how to pitch and how to do different things, but now that he was in an organization to target him and say, hey, here's what you know, now let me coach you. For the first time, he's getting information from one of the 30 best baseball teams in the entire world in terms of development and scouting and everything there. So now he's able to take the knowledge from the coaches and say, how can I be a better pitcher? And he has done that his entire life of just learning and being adaptable and flexible. And that's really what you need in a pitcher and a prospect. You want somebody who's ready to learn and improve. And that's exactly what Sem Robberse brings, is someone who's willing to learn and improve. And that has really paid dividends so far in his career. Robberse is an all-around good player. He's the kind of guy who's going to have a very high floor, but not the highest ceiling, and that's okay. He's going to be someone you can trust to go out, get innings for you, get some wins, and not give up a ton of runs. But at the end of the day, slotting him into your 3rd or 4th spot in a rotation is definitely solid, especially if you're trading him for a rental like Jordan Hicks. He has the potential to go and be a solid player on your team, get you wins, and at the end of the day, that's what every team needs, is wins to go and get to the World Series. He does need to be added to the 40-man roster by the end of 2023, so there is a chance that he does end up getting called up to the major leagues sometime in 2024. I would say probably near August, September if he does. But at the end of the day, I think he's best suited for a call-up sometime at the beginning or middle of 2025. That's my personal preference. But with the Cardinals, if they do have another bad season next year like they're having this year, maybe they go ahead and rebuild. But I think they're going to try and just say this is a blip into the window. We're not going to trade any of our big pieces. We're going to retool for 2024 and 2025 with Goldschmidt, Arenado, and the rest of the crew. So I think this is something that they're going ahead and saying during our window, which doesn't happen to be right now, we're going to go and make sure that next year and the year after, they have a championship contending team. In terms of his pitching performance, Robberse relies a lot on finesse, but he bulked up a lot in 2022, and he's been able to keep it on, whereas past years he hasn't really been able to, and that's helped his velocity tick up a little bit. And he's become more of a well-rounded player who can rely on the finesse when he needs to, but can also power a little bit past you. There's a lot of question marks about his slot release when he first came out of the Netherlands, but it's really repeatable and he's got it down. So repeating his mechanics isn't the end of the world, and it's not something that teams are really worried about, which is good. He should be able to keep his 3/4 motion pretty well, and all 3 of his pitches, his fastball, slider, and changeup, tunnel incredibly well. And that's something you don't often see with the player. You'll see them maybe have like a fastball and a slider tunnel well, but to have 3 different pitches tunnel well, a plus fastball, a solid slider, and a pretty decent changeup, not groundbreaking, but good enough. That's something that's definitely really impressive. His changeup is nasty, but the issue is it really does not deceive right-handed hitters, so it can really only be used against lefties, and you'll see it throughout the video showing on the screen, but that changeup is a really, really good pitch. At the end of the day, his fastball is really slow, but it has a lot of deception to both side hitters, so he uses that around 40% of the time, and then he also uses the slider about 40% of the time. He really likes to rely on that when he needs a strikeout or to get a strike in a key situation. So if a batter finds them in a 1-2 hole or a 2-2 count, I wouldn't be shocked if they're expecting the slider, but because it's a good pitch, he's going to go ahead and most likely get the strikeout or put the ball in play. He's a ground ball pitcher. About 40% of his at-bats end in ground balls, and he just generates a lot of weak contact because of that. That's just going to be his game going forward, and he definitely projects to be a starter. His control is good enough that he's most likely not get relegated to the bullpen, and he's going to be a solid piece for the St. Louis Cardinals going forward. This year, he's averaging 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, or a strikeout an inning, which is by far the best in his career, so he's not going to be a strikeout hitter. That's just how it's going to be. His ERA is not great. It's a 4.06. His expected FIP is 4.11, so there's not a ton of those baseline stats that are jumping out the page. He's a good player. He's only 21 years old in AA, so he has a lot of time to grow and develop. And I think the Cardinals have a pretty good track record with pitchers, so not anywhere near the top, as like the Houston Astros are far and away the best team with pitchers and developing them, but they're good enough that I think they're going to unlock some things out of Sem Robberse, and he's going to be a good player going forward. The other player heading back in this deal is Adam Kloffenstein, a 22-year-old right-handed pitcher who's also in AA. He's currently unranked in the Blue Jays system on both MLB Pipeline and Fangraphs, but if you go back to 2021, Pipeline had him ranked as the 10th best prospect in the system. He had a really bad 2021 in high A, and in 2022, he ended up being really, really good before getting the promotion to AA, which, again, is a very big jump. So if you go from high A to AA, although it just seems like one level, a lot of people say it's most difficult in the minor leagues, and the only thing that rivals it is AAA to the majors. So people aren't expected to immediately tear it up. And in 2023, he's still been at AA, and he's been really, really good. So far, he's pitched to a 3.24 ERA, a 3.45 FIP, 10.5 strikeouts per 9, and he's got the lowest walks per 9 of his career as well. His 127 whip isn't great, but that's just how he's going to be. He's going to give up some hits. He's going to give up some walks. That's just kind of how his profile is set up. What's really interesting is he was a 2018 third-round pick out of Magnolia High School in Texas, but he also had a teammate that was drafted in that same draft by the name of Jordan Groshans, also picked by the Blue Jays in the first round, and you might know him. He used to be a top 100 prospect. He's now on the Marlins in the Zach Pop, Anthony Bass trade from last year. So the Blue Jays really liked what they saw at Magnolia High School this year. It's not often you see teams double dipping in the high school ranks at the same place, but it's happened. You look at Kenya Huggins and Cam Collier out of the same community college last year with the Reds, so there's definitely opportunities for that to happen, but it's just a fun little detail there. He also had an interesting pandemic season. He played in the Constellation Energy League in Texas during that season in order to face some higher competition because there wasn't any minor league systems that were in play in 2020. The Blue Jays allowed this, and he didn't have great numbers as expected. He was really young for the league, and he was going up against people who were just better and more advanced hitters, so it's to be expected, but he really improved a lot. His velocity increased 3 miles an hour from before and after he went to the Constellation Energy League, so he really was able to go ahead and develop himself well. People describe him as a confident leader, someone who's going to be good in the locker room, and he is an absolute competitor. And having someone like that in your locker room is a huge boost because when you have someone who's driven to win every day, you have someone who's going to bring good energy into your locker room, that spreads to the rest of the team. You hear it all the time where someone who has character concerns might not be up higher on draft boards, even though they have great potential, simply because you don't know whether that's going to drag down some of the rest of the team. With Adam Kloffenstein, that's not a concern, and that's probably part of the reason why you'd want him on your team is because he has that good energy and can contribute to creating good vibes throughout your locker room. In terms of his profile, he has about an average fastball. It's more of a sinking fastball than a true 2 or 4 seamer. So that's just part of his profile. He's going to throw that when he needs to. His slider is above average, and his changeup is about average as well, but his curveball really is kind of a change of pace pitch. He's working on that and his changeup to really develop those to be a little bit better. I think they both need a little bit more work before he can really make an impact with both those pitches at the major league level. And he fits really well as a starter. There's not a ton of relief potential, even though he has a good 4-pick Mitch, and he could potentially lose something like the curveball to stick with the fastball, slider, changeup. But at the end of the day, he projects really well as a back-end starter, someone you can rely on to eat innings. I think that's the easiest way to say it. Not in a Jordan Lyles way where you also give up a ton of runs, but he's going to go ahead, give you 6 innings every time, keep you in competitive ball games. And at the end of the day, for a back end starter, especially if you're just going to get someone who can help you in the long run, getting someone like Adam Kloffenstein to eat innings as your 4 or 5 starter is going to pay dividends for a team. For the St. Louis Cardinals, they're going to get a B grade. Although I do like Kloffenstein, his prospect pedigree has faded away a lot, and it's not someone who I would really be super excited about if I was a Cardinal fan. He could be a good impact player, but he's not going to be anything great. He's not going to have the same ceiling as Sem Robberse. And for someone like Jordan Hicks, who's going to slot into the closer role for at least temporarily in Toronto, I'm not sure this is a deal I love for them. I think they could have gotten more value from another team potentially, or by holding out a little bit more. With that being said, we haven't seen a ton of quote-unquote big value from only reliever trades. So far, the only other trade this deadline that's been a reliever exclusively has been David Robertson from the Mets to the Marlins. And at that point, a lot of people weren't happy with the return they got. I personally thought it was a fair return, but it's certainly not as high as something like the Lucas Giolito trade or the Max Scherzer trade. So it seems like relievers are not really going for that same big seller's gap as the starting pitchers are. So that's just kind of, I think, how the deadline's going to end up shaking out. At the end of the day, I don't think this is going to make or break either team, so it's hard to give them an A or anything close to that, because I don't think it's going to push either team over the edge in the long run. There'll be a couple solid pieces, but this isn't a huge trade for the St. Louis Cardinals and the returns they get. They'll get 2 solid players, but it's not a wow, look at who they got. Sem Robberse is going to be good, but at the end of the day, it's not someone I'm jumping out of my chair saying this is the guy the Cardinals got. Good for them. As for the Toronto Blue Jays, I'm going to give them a B+, so a little bit better, and that's simply because they do need bullpen help, and I don't think they parted away with too much. Again, I really do like Sem Robberse. I think he's going to be pretty good, and to get Jordan Hicks for half a year for him isn't horrible, and Kloffenstein's going to be a good addition as well. But for me, it's just not something that's really going to push them over the edge. I know they're going to be a playoff team, and all you need to do is make the playoffs, and if they can keep investing, they'll probably be okay. They'll probably make it. And the Red Sox and Yankees are kind of on their tail, but I really do think this is a good move for them if they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to go all in for it. They're a good team. They should. I just don't think it's enough to push them over the edge, and I don't think they have the prospect depth to go ahead, go all in right now, get more pieces that they need to go and really be competitive this year while also not sacrificing for the future. Unless they have an idea to sign Jordan Hicks long-term, which really is a big question. I think he's going to hit the open market regardless, and the Blue Jays are going to have to really bid for his services. But if they can go and keep him, it'll be a big win. And if he can go and get them maybe even to the League Championship Series, I think that would be a big deal for the Blue Jays and going forward. It's getting them playoff experience and getting them a little bit deep in the postseason, because I really just don't see them winning it all in October this year. That being said, again, please go ahead and subscribe to the video and like the video if you're interested in more content like this. It really means a lot for a channel like me to help and grow and get bigger, for talking about the things I love, which is baseball, prospects, and the trade deadline. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.